Thanks very much. I was going right behind here because that's something that's easier for me to do than some ministers actually. Thanks for the opportunity to come along and talk about cutting spending. And the council tax freeze is an important announcement for two reasons. First of all, it's fulfilling a pledge that we made before the general election. You remember that we campaigned on the basis that we would see the council tax freeze for 2 years. When we arrived, such was the state of the books, we were concerned as to whether that would be deliverable. So we only made a firm promise for 1 year, because we knew we could deliver that, and we didn't want to promise something that we couldn't be sure to deliver, but we wanted to look and see it as possible for the second year. Well, across Whitehall, all departments have been rigorously going through their books. There is undoubtedly a considerable degree of fat that we inherited even now. That's been taken out. And in addition to the savings that we made to fund the deficit reduction strategy, we've been able, by continually bearing down on costs, to find the means to finance the freeze for a second year. And I think that's particularly important because that makes a real difference, especially to lower and middle income families, people who are not going to be entitled to council tax benefit, but neither are they particularly tough in the current circumstances. And we all know from the polling and other evidence that council tax is a major issue for such families. So we're helping councils to do it. You're right, Emma, it's not compulsory. I'm glad to say last year every council in the country took up our incentive, and I hope that they will do the same again. So that's important from that point of view. But as you say, we need not just to deal with that issue, that's one side of it. We need to be looking at ways in which councils can reduce the core budget. Let me say, of course, for those councillors who are ambitious, you're right, the freeze applies if you, the match funding to enable you to freeze applies if you increase your spending by up to 2.5%. But of course, you can increase it by less, and I think many of you will. You can even look to reduce it and still qualify for the incentive and the match fund. So, don't feel that you have to go to the limit to qualify for it. There are plenty of councils who actually are doing less than that. And I accept that some councils, when you come into control and it's been in the hands of the Labour Party for some time, you're going to find rather more fat than others. When you've been in control for a long time and you've whittled it down, then of course you're running a leaner machine to start with. But even so, persistent and rigorous pressures show it can be done. And you're going to hear later on from both Steve Greenhalgh and Dave Burbage about how they've been doing it in authorities that they've run. You can think of other long-term Conservative authorities which still manage to keep a relentless downward pressure on spending. Look at Westminster, look at Wandsworth, but two are obvious examples. So how is that? I think it's being pretty rigorous in your own systems, challenging remorselessly officers. I think it came as a bit of a shock to some of the civil servants in our department when ministers actually wanted to start challenging the figures, that you don't just accept what has been the departmental way of doing things. And that's got to apply to council as well. It means actually members have to be pretty hands-on about it. But can be done. Look at what Boris has been doing in London, pulling down the ludicrous costs that he inherited from Livingston. But I think there's some other things that we can do. And we can do that across the piece, I think, in the local government sector. And it's working with councils. It's not the question of government dictating to councils how you save money. And I think you can collaboratively do a great deal more. And we're, it seems to me, in the business of removing the barriers for you doing more to help yourselves. The local government sector itself has done a lot in this. Look at the local government group's local productivity programme. Now that's council driven, and that's, I think, producing really good results. They did the 100 tried and tested quick wins. I hope a lot of you have read those and have started implementing. They came out December of last year. Recently, the local productivity programme has been reconfigured to have a rather sharper focus on service transformation in areas like procurement and assets, future ways of working, shared services, social care. A lot of pressure on those areas. You can do things more cleverly there. It's worth actually just looking at the scale of the opportunity, it seems to me. Local government at the moment spends £50 billion a year on outside contracts. Now, is there not scope for saving there? Of course there is. We need to remorselessly look at the contracts. part of that discussion, if I can put it that way, we've been having around our incentive to help councils return to weekly bin collection, if they wish, has highlighted that many councils, frankly, got themselves locked into what were not very clever contracts with their refuse collection services. So you ought to be digging down into the detail of those. The detail of the contract shouldn't be a no-go area for members. Members ought to be getting involved in that. Sir Philip Green did the efficiency review for us. He reckons, and I think he knows a thing or two about making efficiencies in his own pretty lean and effective organisation. He reckons councils can typically save up to 20% from their procurement spend. So let's have a look at some of those examples. Shared service procurement. In Lincolnshire, just one county and districts working together, what they're doing is sharing procurement, savings of about £9 million. If you're a small rural district council, as some of those are, that's a decent sum of money to be having. Flexible working. Lancashire, doing exactly that. Going to save about 1.6 million for a flexible working scheme, actually pushing up staff productivity, and from the green agenda, actually managed to cut the carbon emissions as well. So that's a win-win. There you go. You can be efficient and green at the same time. Asset management, massive amounts of local authority assets sitting out there when you think about it. Think about your own local authorities, asset portfolio, and what you can be sensibly doing with it. Now, in the West Midlands, the improvement and efficiency, they've done a really major study on that, potential to yield 640 million over the next 10 years. Yeah, that's key. Exactly what we're doing with our bringing forward of government-owned land, for example, for new housing. It's making more sensible use of the asset book that's sitting there. Insurance costs. Now, there was a problem where, in the past, there were legal difficulties. Those have now been overcome, and the Localism Bill will finally remove that difficulty completely. But in the southwest, again, joint procurement, bringing the cost of insurance down about 20%. So that's something which is an important spend. Paying government energy project. Office of Government Contracts work with the West Midlands Improvement and Efficiency people again, over 100 million saved in energy costs. So all these things are being done, and predominantly the Conservative councils in the vanguard of this. And a very important issue, the care funding calculator. The work that's being done on the back of the care funding calculator, we're seeing about 11.12 million saved in London alone. There's a potential for about 200 million nationally there. Any of you thought about e-auctions? Well, I mean, again, West Midlands, well in the vanguard there. They reckon those e-auctions have saved about 25 million on a range of categories, things like home to school transport, ICT, office supplies. I mean, Birmingham, really go-ahead authority, thanks to Mike Whitby and his team there. 13 e-auctions, releasing over 5 million efficiencies. So, if your officers aren't doing it, be out there asking why aren't you doing it. Be out there challenging all the time. Another part of it where we can help is with the transparency agenda. Now, we know every council in the country, bar one, Labour-controlled Nottingham, which probably says it all. This is the place where the council is actually the new sheriff, it seems to me. So nicking money out of the taxpayers is a little bit more ways than one. Everyone else has published their £500 spend online. We did the same in the department, so we weren't asking you to do something we wouldn't do ourselves. Did the sky fall in? No. Was it a massive cost? No. Has it actually enabled people to start challenging and thinking about the way they behave? Yes. Because it's not just that it's up there that's important. It's not just that that enables people actually consume services to judge. It transforms the behaviour of officials as well. Because if you know it's going to go out online and it's going to be up there publicly and you're going to be accountable for it, you think twice before you spend it, rather than falling into the rather cosy, well, that's how we've always done it, and it all gets lost in the overall scheme of things. And so, very important, that transparency agenda. And I think much more close working with the voluntary sector, because actually very often you can think of important services that can be very effectively delivered in partnership with the voluntary sector or social enterprises. Now, all of those are opportunities, it seems to me, to be there. What the government's doing is encouraging and supporting that. That's why my colleague Joan Hannam, Baroness Hannam, is the minister within our department who leads on procurement, works very closely with the local government group on that. That's why we are doing some barrier busting Things like the localism bill. You know, people talk about the power of general competence as if it's a rather techie thing. Very important. It's about removing legal barriers to councils behaving in a more business-like, a more entrepreneurial way. That's what the objective is about. Local retention of business rates is going to be yet another driver towards councils acting in that entrepreneurial fashion. So this is all part of a general thrust that we're making. So we're very much up for working with local authorities to drive forward the value for money agenda, the procurement agenda. I think this Fringe Week is a very good opportunity to highlight some of that excellent practice. So thanks very much.